Hello, everybody, and welcome from a very rainy and windy Hobart. I'm so glad that you're able to join me this evening and that you've really prioritised your well-being and you're spending the night doing something just for you. So congratulations on that. Just a few administrative points before we get started and jump right into the training. You'll see that there's a chat box below the screen that you're watching me on. So at any time during the call, if something comes up or you just like to share your own experience, feel free to just chat away. I won't be watching it myself, but at the end of the call, when I open it up for questions, I'll come back and I'll just make sure that everyone is got their questions answered, and if there's anything that anyone wants to take offline with me, then we can certainly discuss that afterwards as well. If you're watching this call as a replay, I really hope that you still send me your questions by email if you have them, if anything comes up, and my email is meg@beyondbeingwell.com. I'm so excited to dive into this training. It's a training that I've kind of had in the back of my mind for a number of months, and really it propelled me into action recently when I just had a large number of women coming to me and saying things like, I just feel like there's something missing. I've been to the naturopath, I've worked on the diet stuff, I've done all this exercise, but there's something missing. I'm still not feeling 100% well. And that really resonated with me because it was my journey as well. And I know what it was like and how frustrating it was to get to that point where you almost felt like you were at the end of the road and that no one else could help you, that there was still something missing. So this training is really going to dive into what that missing puzzle piece is, what we can do to kind of start to search for the answers to that inner feeling that something's missing. And we're really going to share some practical tips with you. My focus as a coach with all my clients is really to provide tips that you can go away and practice and that you can habitualize, that are going to work just for you. We all have different personalities and backgrounds and schedules, and so we really need to start to reconnect with the inner resources that we might have lost and find what tools work for us. And today I'm going to share one tool in particular which I know is going to change your life. It changed mine, it changes other clients, and it's just something that's so simple and cost effective that I just think you're going to love it. So let's dive in, shall we? I'm going to turn the video off and share my presentation with you. So hopefully that all goes to plan. I will just say also that I'd really love you to stay until the end of this call because there is a very special offer that I'm only giving out for the next 72 hours. And I think it's going to be something that there's a lot of people applying for. So this is your chance to get on board with that particular program before everyone else and to get a discount on that program as well. Okay, so I'm just going to share the screen and check that everything is working fine. Hang on a moment. Okay. I'm just going to also ask if anyone is able to just send me a quick message in the chat box letting me know that you can hear and see everything okay, that you can hear me and that you can see the presentation. That would be absolutely wonderful. And I'll just wait for that. There is a slight delay between me speaking and you being able to hear it, and then you being able to respond. So don't worry too much if you write something in the chat box and it takes me a little while to come to it. There's just a slight delay with this software. Great. Perfect. Thank you for that. So let's get cracking. The missing piece of the wellbeing puzzle. Health, freedom, and purpose is what I'm calling it. So what we're going to cover in today's training, I'm going to talk a little bit about what is the problem with our current approach to wellbeing. And I'm going to talk about kind of the myth that we've been sold that wellness and wellbeing is all about what we eat and what we do in terms of fitness. I'm going to then let you in on the secret about what the missing piece is. And then I'm going to share some tools with you about how we can overcome exhaustion, stress, and anxiety. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the special offer, and then I'm going to open it up to questions. But first of all, let me just share a little bit about my story. And I do this not to be one of those coaches who likes to say that I've kind of conquered all my fears and that everything is dandy and that, you know, I live a life of my dreams, although I'm moving closer to that. I share it because it's important for you to understand why I'm here and who I'm here to serve. So I'm a wellbeing and self-compassion coach and a yoga teacher. I'm also a fitness instructor with a background in public health. But me as a person, I'm a nature lover and freedom seeker, and really someone who is looking for purpose in my life, purpose and freedom. I worked for about 10 years in international development in countries all over the world, and I thought that that was something that I was going to do for the rest of my career, and I really was passionate about it. I studied a lot. I got a lot of degrees, and I ended up kind of overseas in a job that was my dream job with Oxfam. I was in Burma, and I was really at the peak of my career, but there was something missing and I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Now, I'd always been someone who was quite sick, and I'd always suffered from kind of ongoing anxiety. I'd always felt like no matter what I did, there was always something wrong with me. And I don't know whether anyone can relate to that feeling that there was constantly something that I needed to fix. And that's really, I think, something that is a problem with a lot of society's expectations on women. We've actually come to think that there's something wrong with us when there's actually not. And so that anxiety and that fear and I guess, you know, all of those physical symptoms kind of all culminated in a period of really intense total physical breakdown about 18 months ago when I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. I was suffering from adrenal fatigue, although I don't like to use those terms to differentiate myself, because part of my healing journey was actually beginning to understand that labeling things wasn't helping either. So that started me to really look deeply at my life and to think about the life that I actually wanted to lead and not the life that I should have been leading. And that word should is something we're going to come back to again and again in this training. And so I quit my job, my well-paying job, and I just started doing the inner work. I became a yoga teacher. It was something I'd always had a passion for. By that stage, I'd finished my fitness instructing course, and I started just following the inner voice that was telling me to do something about well-being and wellness. And as I went through my own healing journey, and I went from the physical symptoms and going to doctors and specialists to a more natural approach where I was working with naturopaths and doing a lot of my own research, which very quickly became apparent to me that there was something beyond the external healing journey that needed work, and that there was something around the way that I was thinking and the way that I was feeling and the way that I was behaving, which was undermining my efforts to feel well and to feel happy. And that's really what led me into this work of being a coach and really focusing on self-compassion and really focusing on the missing puzzle piece. Because what I learned is that I had really not established the tools to deal with my feelings adequately, and I had not learned exactly what I needed to learn to be able to live a stress-free and anxiety-free life. And as such, I was being buffered around by circumstances, and I didn't really feel in control of my life. So fast forward to now, and I'm living a location independent lifestyle. I still, ever since I quit my job, I've not worked full time again. I really tried to design a life that's true to my values and what I want. And it's something that I want every other woman to be able to do as well. And it would look different to my life and different to your friends or your sisters or your mums as well. I am super excited about the new program that I'm going to offer you at the end of this call, but let's just get straight in. That's more than enough about me to what you might be feeling. So perhaps you're on this call because you feel a little bit burnt out, or you're suffering from burnout in the workplace, or maybe as a carer as well. You might be feeling anxiety, more often than not, and that is a sign that, there's some inner work to be done. You might be, what I see a lot is, and I've experienced it too, just feeling really indecisive and a bit paralyzed in terms of making big life decisions. And that's really common, and it's actually just symptomatic of overwhelm, and we're going to talk about that as well. Perhaps you've got some undiagnosed symptoms that are kind of changing. And this is what I found as well. What started out as a gut issue turned into a fatigue issue, turned into a mental health issue, turned into a food sensitivities, a chemical sensitive. And these symptoms, you can't ever just pin them down. And Western medicine certainly can't help us to be able to, once we've reached the end of that diagnostic testing, to be able to go any further. You might be having kind of digestive upsets or hormonal upsets, the most common that I hear. Maybe there's just that feeling, like I mentioned, about just not feeling 100% despite all of your efforts to go to the gym, to eat well, to have work-life balance. You're just still not feeling 100%. You want to know why. A big one is that you might be feeling fatigued and exhausted, and you know that it's not right to feel that way all the time. You may be feeling frazzled or a bit brain foggy, or you might just have realized that you're a little bit self-critical and that you're comparing yourself to other people often. In short, maybe you're feeling like you've done all the conventional nutrition and fitness things that you should be doing, that you've read about, but you're still searching for the missing link. So let's talk about the wellbeing puzzle that we all know. If we read mainstream newspapers, if we read blogs, if we look at Facebook, if we watch morning TV, this is what we're going to be told to do. First of all, we're going to be told that we need to be exercising regularly, and it should be in a structured environment. So we're really keen on exercise that's done in gyms, that's done in classes, that's scheduled in our days. And that's great in so many respects. And I think the rise of fitness and the popularity of fitness has really been able to empower women to understand their bodies and feel strength in their bodies in a whole new way. However, as we're going to find out, traditional fitness approaches and looking at fitness in this way that we should be exercising is something that I've found is actually creating an epidemic of anxiety about exercise. And ditto with diet and nutrition. Suddenly we are no longer experts on what we need to eat. And the scientific kind of, or I guess the nutritionist movement and the dietetics movement, which is great. And I've got loads of friends that are both. And I always refer clients specifically with chronic illness. But we've really come to rely on science to help us to understand what we should eat and what we shouldn't eat, to the point where every single food has now become labeled as good or bad, that we've started to break down something that's extremely cultural and something that we should enjoy and something that we shouldn't feel guilt around into micronutrients and language that we can't even relate to as what food used to be. And I think that, again, what's happened with this overcomplication of quite simple messages is that we have lost touch with our inner tuition or our intuition, and we've become reliant on and almost paralyzed by the information overload out there. And that in itself, I've found, is also causing quite a lot of anxiety. The third bit of the puzzle piece that we might have heard is around medical care or alternative therapy. So, working with naturopaths, energy healers, also working with doctors, specialists, and, sickness care and wellness care I've used a lot, and they certainly have a place in the puzzle. But again, all of these approaches have one thing in common, and it is that we're relying on external kind of advice as to how to live our lives well. And that reliance can not only lead to overwhelm, but it can disconnect us from the things that we feel strongly in ourselves that our bodies and our minds need. And the last piece of the puzzle is, about sleep and rest. And we all know now that 8 hours is great, but oh my God, what if we're not getting that? Does that mean we're bad? And what it's done is this plethora of information. It's made us actually really create this dichotomy, which is that we're either good at something or we're bad at something. We're well or we're not well. And what we actually know is that life is so much more flexible than that, and that we go in little peaks and troughs, and that being well 100% of the time is actually just not possible. And it's not something that we should be striving for. Exercising 365 days of the year is not something we should be striving for, nor, eating healthy food and denying ourselves pleasures when we're with friends and family. We shouldn't be doing that 365 days of the year. So part of the thing that I've been saying, if you haven't picked up on it, is that the traditional wellbeing puzzle is kind of leaving us feeling broke, fed up, and still maybe we're feeling unwell. And that's because we're topping up this leaky bucket with all these great things. We're eating well, we're going to the gym, we're seeing specialists, we're getting a lot of testing, we're trying to work on our mindset, but there's still this feeling of fatigue and sometimes this feeling of anxiety. And it's like the bucket is leaking and we don't know why the holes are there and how to fix them. And again, this slide just shows, why these external fixes can make us more anxious. And we'll go into what that anxiety does and how it contributes to fatigue and overwhelm, and how it can be actually undermining our efforts to live a whole and healthy life. So perhaps we've got some symptoms, some digestive upsets, for example, and we feel a little bit of anxiety about that. So we go and seek some external advice. We read some blogs. We see some specialists, and we don't really get any answers there. At least we don't get tangible help to habitualize new habits that are going to help us. Over time, those external fixes, which might be taking supplements, might be exercising more, might be trying to stress less, it might be trying to eat certain foods or cut out whole food groups. Over time, those fixes, because they've been imposed from outside and they haven't come from our own inner wisdom, create a pattern of background stress and anxiety in our brains, which then leads to a feeling of overwhelm. and an inability to deal with external stresses when they arise. And it can also manifest as lack of motivation. So anyone that tells me that they're not motivated or that they're procrastinating, to me that demonstrates overwhelm, which demonstrates that there are background patterns running in the head, which are usually about what you should be doing. And then, as we know, that can create more symptoms in the body, and we'll go into the physiological response and how that plays out. So always feeling like we should be doing something is activating the stress response in the body. And this is something that I really want to get across. The word should and the pressure that we put on ourselves to live a certain way and to uphold a certain lifestyle and to be seen to be doing a certain thing, those thoughts and patterns are activating the fight or flight response in your body. And that is what is causing overwhelm, and that is what is causing more anxiety, more symptoms, and more fatigue. So in short, the traditional wellbeing puzzle, working on diet and exercise can absolutely help and absolutely should be part of a well life. However, firstly, we need to look at the cause of the symptoms. So there's no point investing a whole lot of time and money if the symptoms, in physical assistance, for example, if the symptoms are being caused by thoughts. The second thing is that we could inadvertently be placing additional stress and anxiety on ourselves by doing things that we feel we should be doing. And the third thing, which is related, is that these approaches often don't align with who we truly are and the life that we want to lead. So what's the missing puzzle piece that I've been talking about? To me, when I was really sick, what took me a long time to understand is how important it is to learn the tools to manage stress, anxiety, and self-criticism. And I know that that sounds logical. And I know that, there are a lot of like Huffington Post articles, a lot of blog posts about how to manage stress. And they're usually like top 7 ways to manage stress: exercise, eat well, all of these things, which of course can help manage stress. But reading top 7 lists is so much different from actively learning the tools and practicing them on a day-to-day basis so that it's making a difference. This is all stuff we know. Like, we know to eat vegetables, we know to move our bodies, we know to limit stress and to rest 8 hours a day. But it's when it comes to doing that we tend to sabotage ourselves. And part of the reason for that is that we are overwhelmed and we are anxious and we are self-critical. I want to cover what stress does in the body, and I talked briefly about the fight or flight response. And I know that a lot of you as wellness gurus would really have a quite good understanding of the adrenaline cycle in the body. But basically, stress in the body can create every single symptom that I know a lot of my clients and myself have battled with. And for some reason, we feel like it's not okay to admit that stress is the cause of our symptoms. Like, there's some kind of understanding that it's okay if it's a physical illness that's been diagnosed, but saying that we're stressed or anxious isn't good enough. And it's actually, looking at this diagram, we can see just how massive an effect stress and anxiety can have on the body. And it is through the ongoing and consistent activation of the fight or flight response, leading to depletion of certain hormones, a downregulation of key bodily functions like digestion, like the immune system, that lead to ongoing chronic symptoms and over time disease. So look at this: mood issues, depression, irritability, sleeping issues, headaches, panic attacks. It's increasing blood pressure, heart rate, cholesterol, and our risk of heart attack. On the immune system, something a lot of clients say is they always feel on the cusp of getting sick. They feel like constantly anxious that they're going to pick up every bug in the office, and they do. And that's because their immune system just cannot fight, because there is no buffer with a constantly activated fight or flight response. Stomach cramps, reflux, nausea, IBS, really common. Loss of libido and menstrual issues in women, joint aches and pains, and a lower bone density. I mean, if this was a disease that we could blood test for, there would be an outrage globally that there was something causing this many issues that wasn't being addressed. And it's the same thing I just really want to get across here. If you're focusing on exercise and diet, but you're not focusing on stress, you're actually doing yourself a massive disservice. You're putting yourself at risk of continuing ongoing symptoms, and you're actually, over time going to put your body into a situation where it might start maladapting. And at that stage, that's when we get chronic illness. So just briefly about stress and anxiety, and I use them interchangeably because to me, stress isn't something external. Although there can be things we perceive as stressful, to me, they're both internal things. So there's states wherein we perceive that we can't cope with what is happening, what has happened, or what will happen. So stress and anxiety are responses to our perception. There's a mistake there, sorry, of what is happening. So it's really how we respond to situations that create stress and anxiety. It's not necessarily the situations themselves. And that explains why someone getting an email from their boss can go about their business and the person next to them completely loses it when they get a discouraging email from their boss. It's based on our beliefs, our behavioral patterns, and our recurrent thinking patterns. The key thing to get here, and I'll say it again and again, is that stress and anxiety have a physiological response in the body. It's the thing that causes all of those symptoms. They can prevent us from thinking clearly, making good decisions, and can lead to overwhelm. And a lot of clients who are in that kind of overwhelm, they say to me, when I'm really anxious and stressed, I can't think rationally. I can't get out of it. I get stuck in a loop because I can't reach the point in my brain that is rational. And there's a very good reason for that. When the fight or flight response is activated, we're preparing to fight or flee. Our body isn't in the mood to make rational, logical decisions if we're fearing for our lives. And so this is why physiologically you can't actually connect with that part of your brain when you're in that mode. And that's why we have to learn to switch it off. And stress and anxiety are created predominantly internally, which I've already said. Although there are external stresses, our response to them determines the outcome. The way I like to see it, and I use analogies very rarely because often I forget them or I have to make them up on the spot. But this is the one that I keep coming back to because it makes the most sense to me. Imagine your body is like a boat and you're doing all the things to keep the boat afloat. So you're making sure there's no holes in the hull, you're scrubbing the decks, you're making sure that the sails are working well. And that's what we're doing with kind of health and traditional health and fitness approaches. So diet and exercise, for example. And the problem is that the sea that we're on is prone to change, and that's life. Life is going to throw waves at us. It's going to throw different things our way, and we're not necessarily going to know that they're coming. Bad weather might come in, and we just need to understand that we that we have the tools and the knowledge to get through them. Now, a good boat is going to go a long way to helping us be able to weather the storm. But the key thing that is going to help us survive is our knowledge of how to sail, of how to change direction, of how to sail away from the storm. And that's the stress and anxiety piece. If we can really begin to understand that managing our thoughts and emotions is equally as important as what we put into our mouths and how we move our body, I believe that we can absolutely live a life that is on our terms, full of purpose, full of well-being, and that we're able to weather those storms in a much more calm and centered way. Which leads me to my next point, and part of the traditional wellbeing puzzle has always been to separate the body and mind and to have different approaches for them and to not integrate them. And thankfully now with yoga and meditation and mindfulness practices becoming more mainstream, we are beginning to see a much more strong focus on the importance of mind-body connection. We truly are absolutely interconnected. Everything we think and everything we believe has a physiological impact on our bodies. And really coming to grips with that will help you to navigate which well-being things you should prioritize going forward, because they may not be the things that you've been told to prioritize. I'll give you an example of how the body and mind are connected. So imagine that you're thinking about a really deadly spider, and you, because something happened to you in the past, you have quite a strong fear of spiders. From when you were young, there's an existing belief that spiders are dangerous. And now every time you see or think about a spider, you get an adrenaline rush, you get sweaty, you start to worry, and you're basically deemed quite irrational or overwhelmed. Now, the physiological response in your body is no different from if a spider was actually on your hand than if you were thinking about it on your hand. I really want you to get this concept. There is no difference between us thinking something and thinking an image and actually having the image play out in real life. And this is why anxiety is so damaging. If we're constantly thinking about what's going to happen in the future and all the terrible things that are going to happen to us when we go out to public speak or when we go to work or when we have that conversation with a friend, our body can't actually tell the difference between you thinking it and it actually happening. And so by ruminating on negative thoughts, by obsessing over things that you generally have no control over in that moment, what you're inadvertently doing is activating the fight or flight response in your body. You're working your adrenal glands, which are on top of your kidneys. You're creating a hormonal rush, which is diverting blood away from your digestive system, causing issues in the digestive system, diverting them away from the production of sex hormones, causing menstrual issues. You're creating shallow breath in the chest, leading to high blood pressure and high heart rate. And you're creating adrenaline in the body. And can you see now why you feel so tired all the time? If you're thinking about things going wrong, if you're worried about consequences of things you've said, if you're not actually here now in the moment, of course you're exhausted, because your mind is constantly running these patterns, which is triggering a physical response in the body, which is leading to total exhaustion. I'll give you another example, and it's something that happens a lot, and I used to be the biggest culprit of it, and sometimes I still slip into it. To-do lists. Sometimes to-do lists can be highly motivating, but what I've noticed is that these days to-do lists have gotten out of control. They're like 5 pages long, and every time you look at that to-do list, your body is actually creating a physical response to the thought of that you're not going to get that done. The to-do list is making you feel like you're in fear for your life. And this constant revisiting of the to-do list throughout the day, and then when you have a day off, you want to get everything done on your to-do list. It's actually creating, this cycle that it's very difficult to break out of. And over time, you become so adjusted to constantly being in this mode that when, illness does come up in the workplace, you're of course going to be the first one that gets sick, etc., etc. So I really want to hammer home this idea that thoughts and beliefs have a huge role to play in your physical well-being, far probably greater than what we've been told before. And I think perhaps we may have overinflated the role of food and the role of exercise. And what we've done is actually downplay the role of anxiety and stress. So as I've said, activates a fight or flight response and other hormonal reactions. It affects our motivation because we can't be motivated to do new behaviors when we're stuck in a pattern of overwhelm. It can sabotage our efforts at behavior change, can prevent us from having the confidence to achieve life on our own terms. And this is what I see so much, that being stuck in this habitual stress response has actually worn us down to the point where we're like, oh, all those dreams and hopes that I had, yeah, I'm too tired now. And I should just do this, so I'll just do it. I should go after this promotion, so I'll just do it. What happened to what you wanted? What happened to the life that you wanted to lead? I see so many women who are just not living their truth and not being confident to go out and express who they truly are because life has burnt them out and beaten them down. And it's definitely a product, I think, of our culture. And as it says next, it can lead us to this feeling of being paralyzed, overwhelmed, and indecisive. And you can see now, because the fight or flight response is activated, you can't access the part of your brain that makes rational decisions. That's been proven in studies that you can't actually access that part of your brain when you're in the fight or flight response. So you're constantly questioning what's right and what's wrong. You're disconnected from your own inner wisdom in a way because you're living up in your head and your chest and you're not grounded. You're not grounded in the present. It can certainly affect our relationships, and I think that's something that we've all experienced. When we're stressed and anxious, we're not a very nice person to be around, and it can really stop us living in the present moment. And something that a lot of women tell me that they want is joy, is to feel joy and happiness again. And joy is something that we seem to have let go of once we became adults. And I think that reintegrating the little girls within all of us and understanding that we can experience joy simply by being mindful and being present, that's life-changing. That's well-being to me. So here's another example, because I want to differentiate between what are some of the underlying stress patterns and what are the external stresses that we can't control. So a lot of us have constant things going on in the back of our heads, and they're usually beliefs or recurrent negative thoughts. So mine, for example, my limiting belief is that I'm not worthy. And it's something that I've held on to since I was a really young girl. And it's a pattern that plays out again and again in my life in different ways. It has stopped me in the past from putting myself out there and of living a life that I really wanted. And it's a pattern that I know creates ongoing anxiety and stress in the back of my mind. It's a pattern that's always going. It's always there. And no matter how much work I've done on it, it's still a daily task for me to have to be compassionate to that part of myself. Others of us have underlying financial worries, relationship worries, professional worries, worries that we're too fat, that we're not fast enough, that we should be doing this and that we should be doing that. And all of those patterns, if someone asked you how you were, you wouldn't mention them, but they often come out in weird situations. So, for example, the more and more of these underlying stresses you have going on, the less able you're going to be, the less able you are to manage the external stresses when they arise. For example, an email from your boss that has a large body of work in it, or a phone call from a friend, that you're not prepared for, or anything else that you find externally stressful. So those two combined absolutely equals overwhelm. But then we put another layer of it, and when we are feeling stressed and anxiety and anxious, we beat ourselves up for it. And we start telling ourselves that we're not good enough, that we can't deal with stress, that we shouldn't be anxious because our lives are great. And we start this pattern of like absolute self-flagellation that in itself is an underlying pattern, but in itself, when combined with the other two, can lead to this feeling of overwhelm. It can absolutely lead to physical symptoms that don't have a medical cause, and they can over time lead to illness. So what we really need to focus on, we can't do anything about the middle circle, about the external stresses necessarily, but we can try and work on the underlying things that are worrying us. We can work on being compassionate to ourselves so that we're not triggering more anxiety and stress. And we can try and prevent the feeling of overwhelm so that we can start living life on our terms. It's really a journey of becoming self-aware and then becoming self-accepting and then becoming self-compassionate. And that's what I found my journey led to. When I got to the end of all the physical stuff, that's where I landed, was like, oh my God, I've been horrible to myself. Could that have been part of the cause of my anxiety all of these years? And interestingly, I think I said this in the webinar teaser, but Chris and Neff, who's the kind of lead expert globally on self-compassion, has done studies and actually shown that women who women who aren't self-compassionate think that they need to be that way to hold themselves in check. Like, if we're not mean to ourselves, we're just going to go wild and get out of control and like eat a whole, tub of ice cream. And it's just not true. If we're not mean to ourselves, chances are we're going to be far more confident to do the things we want to do. We're going to feel far better in our bodies. We're going to be less anxious and less stressed and less tired. And we're actually going to be able to express who we are. We're not going to go wild. We know what to do. And actually, I think the lack of self-compassion in my case, and I know in some clients' cases, is what causes them to do the destructive behavior in the first place. So eating, for example, with emotion attached to it, that comes from a lack of self-compassion. Or, choosing destructive behavior like drinking or drugs, that comes from a lack of self-compassion. So it's really a key part of this puzzle that we've been missing all this time. I'm just going to check in to see how you guys are going. See that you're still there. Okay. Awesome. Yes, Hanson, the to-do list is insane. And I like to prioritize, I do a top 3, and they're really things that absolutely have to do, and not have to do like my version of have to do. They have to do in terms of what I want to achieve, and then they relate to my goals and my vision. And I just limit myself to 3 things a day. And it's really been able to help me prioritize, and it's been able to, and I use the tool with clients as well, to get them out of the habit of just being busy, because that's what we're being taught to do. Being busy and rushing is a sure way to activate stress response. Yeah, so we really have to learn that it's actually okay to have time in the day to nap and to do some self-care and to just not have anything on. Like, I know a lot of friends who on their days off, they feel like they've got to get through all their to-do lists and their chores, and it's like, just enjoy it. There's always time. It's about priorities. And what I find is there's so much disconnect between what we do, our behavior, and what we actually want in life. And part of it comes from the fact that we've never actually admitted what we want out loud. Anyway, I digress. How do we stop this anxiety and stress? That is the question. Well, thankfully, there are so many tools available, and the key to take away from this training is that we want to try and activate the relaxation response as often as possible. Any opportunity we can do to activate that response is going to be something that helps our bodies heal, gets our mind back in the game, and comes back to that place of centeredness and calm. And so things we can do are like mindfulness practices, meditation, yoga, playing, connecting with other people that we love, connecting with nature, connecting with something that you believe in, doing things that light you up, like cooking, or playing with the dogs, or going for a walk in nature. Like, the things that are really specific to you, they're the things that are going to help evoke the relaxation response, promote feel-good hormones, promote positive thoughts, and get us out of this stress and anxiety pattern. Not rushing, not making to-do lists, not putting unnecessary pressure on yourself. These are all things that we can do. Spiritual practices, having a gratitude practice. We can change and remove limiting beliefs. And most importantly, we can practice self-compassion. Awesome. So I want to do a really quick exercise with you, because I promised to give you a tool, and I'm not letting you go away without having experienced what it feels like in your body to evoke the relaxation response. Okay, so what I want you to do is just close your eyes. And I want you to place your left hand on your belly and your right hand on your chest. And don't start the self pattern of, I look stupid and I don't have time for this. I just want you to sit for a moment and breathe. And start to focus in on the breath. So noticing maybe your belly rising and falling. And I want you to just, without any criticism or judgment, notice which hand is moving more. Is it your left or your right hand? So for most of us, we actually only breathe into our chests, meaning that the right hand is the one doing most of the moving. Now, because our aim is to activate the relaxation response, I want you to try and move the left hand more. And to do that, you're just going to breathe deeper and into your belly. Imagining on the inhale, the air coming in through the nostrils, down the throat, into the stomach, all the way down as far as it can go. And then taking a long, big exhale, left hand falls, shoulders drop away from the ears. And so breathing properly should be like a wave. So as we inhale, left hand rises and then right hand rises. And as we exhale, it goes the opposite way. And I want you to just keep breathing for 1 or 2 more breaths really deeply. Try to focus on the sensation of breathing. Trying to get the left hand to move more. And if you are ever doing this and your brain seems to wander, which is perfectly fine and natural, you can try counting. So inhaling 1, exhaling 1, and so forth. Now just gently open the eyes again and just notice how you feel after doing 30 seconds of deep breathing. And you can write in the chat box if you like. When we, just like the body, I said the body and mind are connected, and we can influence our body through our thoughts, we can do vice versa. So we can influence our thoughts through our body. And the breath is this beautiful gift that we've been given to do that. There is no physical way, if we're breathing properly and we're breathing deeply, that we can have the fight or flight response activated. Short, shallow chest breathing equals stress response. Long, deep belly breathing equals relaxation response. And this tool, I mean, it sounds so simple, but it's absolutely game changing. Let me tell you, when I learned to breathe properly, I would use it before job interviews. I have clients do this, going to the toilets and do deep breathing before meetings. I do it regularly. I do it probably 50 or 60 times a day. I come back to the breath and I do 3 or 4 deep belly breaths. And what it allowed my body to do was actually start to settle down. And once you're settled down, you can access that rational part of your brain where you go, hey, I don't need to be doing a billion things at once right now. I can just be doing one thing and doing it well, and that's enough. So breathing properly and breathing techniques, but just doing deep belly breathing, doing that, like lying down, the exercise we just did, using your counting, doing any kind of mindfulness practice where we use the breath, that is evoking the relaxation response. And there's no need to get a gym membership. There's no need to get a fancy new diet regime or go on a detox. It's something that is available to you 100% of the day. Cool? Don't want you to forget it. Try it tomorrow. Go out and just try and breathe deeply whenever you start feeling overwhelmed or stressed. Just do your deep belly breaths and then come back to being present in the moment and out of those negative thought patterns. Oh, okay. So this is my wellbeing puzzle. And you'll notice there's a few more puzzle pieces to it. So eating well, eating whole foods, moving the body in a way that you enjoy. This is a self-compassionate wellbeing puzzle. So moving your body in a way that you enjoy. Why would you go to a spin class if you absolutely hate it? I have people come to me and they're like, I just hate yoga. And I'm like, don't do it. It's fine. You don't have to do it. Loving, really being open to receiving love and also giving love is a really good way to evoke the relaxation response, to live a whole life, to live a well life. Resting is so important. I regularly nap. It's really important because what lying flat does as well is it enables more blood to nourish the adrenals, and you're not, like, even sitting up, you're working some part of the adrenal system. So really lying flat, lying in the dark 10 minutes a day, particularly if you're suffering from adrenal fatigue, starting to do those things and schedule them. Look, I know that we work, and I know that there are limits to this stuff. Find a routine that works for you. The trick is, with being self-compassionate, is we're learning what our bodies need, not what, Michelle Bridges' body needs or my body needs or anyone else's. It's what your body needs. You're the expert on you. No one else can tell you what's going to work. Playing, scheduling time for play and joy. Relaxing, connecting, with something higher, if that's nature, if that's a spiritual practice, if that's connecting with your friends or your loved ones, connecting with animals, and then breathing. And of course, the most important puzzle piece in the middle there is self-compassion, doing all of those things in a way that if we don't do something in a day, like we don't move our bodies, or we eat a dessert, we're not going to just go back and activate the stress response by making ourselves feel shitty about it. Something I work with all my clients on is setting goals and working on a vision that is really self-compassionate. It's something that I've seen make all the difference. When we set really rigid goals for ourselves, like by September, I'm going to run a half marathon, and we fail, that starts the whole pattern of feeling bad about ourselves again, and undermines our confidence to live the life we want. So setting goals like, by September, I'll be moving my body 4 times a week in a way I really enjoy for 60 minutes at a time. Those goals are motivating. Those goals are the ones that keep us on track. And hey, if you only reach 50% of the goal by September, 50% is better than 25, is better than 0%. This approach to well-being is so much more sustainable and so much more enjoyable. And I want to talk really quickly about why it matters. And I think I've said a lot of this, but self-compassion helps us to live a life on our terms, and it helps us to feel more in control. And I know that for a lot of women, feeling in control is something that's so important to actually remove the stress and anxiety. So when we feel like we're able to dictate the terms of our life and feel in control, then we're more likely to be able to feel joy and happiness. So as I said, actually being compassionate to ourselves can produce feel-good hormones in the body, and it evokes a relaxation response. Just like when you feel compassion to a friend who's going through a hard time, there's a beautiful meditation, maybe I'll do a podcast on it, wherein you imagine a friend telling you they're suffering, and you feel the compassion for them in your body, and then you reverse it on yourself. And sometimes that takes a really long time to be able to do, because the pattern in our heads is so ingrained that we have to be harsh to ourselves. We find it really hard to connect. But when we do, that feeling in the body, that love, that energy can actually promote really good feel-good hormones, which in turn attract positive thinking. So we become less reliant on external factors for happiness. I don't know whether anyone else has been this person, but I used to be someone, and still occasionally am, we're all vulnerable, where I really needed external validation from co-workers, from bosses, and I was constantly like checking my email, waiting for something good to happen. You know that feeling? It's quite bizarre. I was looking so much outside myself to be happy and to feel healthy and alive, that I'd forgotten that, I actually had the tools and the wisdom within to feel like that right now. We've all got the tools and the capability to feel happy right now in this moment. It's whether we choose to do so or not. So it stops the background patterns of anxiety, helps us to be more compassionate to others, which is a huge one. And as I said, it promotes a sense of well-being at the cellular level. We are all energy, and knowing, being able to work with positive and negative energy and understand the differences in your body is something that I know can really change lives, and I've seen it happen. And it helps us to tackle the big challenges and the big questions like, what do I want to do with my life? What is my purpose? What am I here to do? What is a dream life for me? And what are the steps I need to take to go after it? So how to start being self-compassionate? Well, the first thing is to start choosing the language that you use extremely carefully, both inside and out. So just as thoughts have a physiological response in the body, language does too. If you're constantly putting yourself down or being self-deprecating, or you start your emails with sorry, or you're apologizing, you're almost telling yourself you're not worthy. Be really careful about the language you use internally as well. So when you do, for example, do a behavior that you know isn't good for your well-being, don't start a pattern that's saying, I knew you'd do this. I knew you'd eat the packet of brownies, you big fatty. Like, that's not helpful. Say something like, I understand you're feeling a bit anxious at the moment and that's why you've probably behaved in this way. It's okay. We can get through this. It's all about language. It's the way we perceive ourselves. It's the way we present ourselves to the world. I've spoken about the importance of setting meaningful goals that actually align with who you are. So stop self-sabotaging by setting someone else's goals, by trying to follow someone else's journey, and actually look within to what you want. Learn to speak your own language. So understand and provide space for your feelings. Some of my friends think I'm wild for saying this, but I really believe that most of society's ills are caused by the fact that we don't have the tools to deal with bad feelings when they arise. We've been taught that to feel anxious or vulnerable or stressed is not right. There's something wrong with you if you feel like that. And actually, feelings are just emotions, and emotions are energy in motion. They're just little signs that the body is sending us that something isn't right, or your subconscious mind that is sending you something's not right. So learning to understand what your triggers are, becoming self-aware enough to understand that if you're feeling anxious and stressed, it's not the end of the world, that often you just need to sit there and breathe deeply and the feeling will pass. That's the stuff that's transformative. I've already talked about deep breathing and mindfulness. I've talked about some, self-care. So napping, bathing, cooking, whatever you like to do that really nurtures you and makes yourself feel worthy. Love it. Go for it. Affirmations are great. So saying things subconsciously in your mind like I am worthy or I approve of myself, even doing it in front of the mirror can be really transformative. And the most important thing is really asking what you want and need for your well-being and then giving it to yourself. So that's the end of that part of the training. Can't wait to hear all your questions in a minute. I want to give you guys the lowdown on the new program that I've just created because I'm so excited about it. Literally on the edge of my seat excited. It's called the Overthinker's Roadmap to Health and Freedom, and it's all about health, confidence, and purpose. This is a very special program that I've designed for women who are ready to show anxiety and exhaustion. Who's the boss? I'm how to live from the heart and not the head. So it's actually a 3-month coaching and training program, especially for women experiencing anxiety, overwhelm, or undiagnosed symptoms. And it's really targeted at women who are ready to go beyond the conventional health and fitness models. Women who are at the end of that road and know that there's inner work to be done. Yes, we're going to focus on the food stuff. Yes, we're going to focus on the exercise stuff as well. Yes, we're going to focus on detoxing the home, all of that amazing stuff. But we're also going to give the tools to be able to start to navigate the stress and anxiety that you're experiencing so that you can stop feeling so tired all the time. The result, wow, freedom, the confidence to live a life you want, health, of course, and purpose, which is something that's greatly overlooked in the wellbeing debate as well. So you go from being someone who's overthinking to living in the moment, from overanalyzing to trusting your instincts. You go from feeling exhausted to being energized, from anxious to calm, from living life like you should to living life on your terms. Living from the head, you go to living from the heart. From experiencing symptoms to being free of symptoms, from feeling self-doubt to feeling confident, and from being one of those multitasking to-do list queens to someone who can prioritize based on what you need. So it's actually 6 one-on-one fortnightly coaching sessions with me over Skype. So this is available for women anywhere in the world. And it also includes 6 pre-recorded training sessions, which will actually be the sessions which include the tools that you need to start working with to figure out what's going to work for you. So a lot of health coaching programs are really just focused on the one-on-one coaching. And what I've found is that there's never enough time in the session to focus on what you've been through, what your goals are, what we're going to do for the next fortnight, and then for me to teach tools as well. So I really wanted to design this program so that you could understand and have some more theoretical knowledge about, you know, what certain techniques have worked for others and what might work for you as well. So it includes the workbook and all the worksheets, unlimited email support, which any of my clients will tell you is highly valuable, especially when you're having one of those off weeks. You just need a little bit of either some tough love or some actual love. And plus, and this is just a very special gift that I'm not going to give to everyone, if you pay in full, you receive a bonus 90-minute Freedom from Anxiety Roadmap session, which is valued at $150. So this is what we'll cover. In module 1, so every module is a fortnight. So there's 6 fortnights, which is 3 months. In module 1, we're going to talk about the desire stuff. So we're really going to get clear on what you want, what are your priorities, and what are the steps we need to take to get there. We're going to explore what your confident, well and purposeful woman looks like so that we can be able to match our behaviors with our goals. And it's something that it sounds really simple, but you know, when we get into it, you'll begin to understand just how important it is. In module 2, we're going to dive right into trying to turn off the fight or flight response. We're going to tackle self-awareness. We're going to look at mindfulness. We're going to look at some meditation practice and visualization as well, and start to clear away the debris that might be making you feel fatigued and overwhelmed. And then module 3, everyone's favorite, we're going to look at diet and we're going to look at exercise. We're going to look at what your healthy routine needs to be able to get you feeling well and living the life that you want to lead. In module 4, we're going to look at the soul stuff, which is actually the purpose stuff. Why are you here? What do you want to do? How far away are you from that? And what can we do to start you moving towards living a life that's more aligned with your values and who you are? In module 5, this is a really cool one. We get to start decluttering and detoxifying the home and all our environment. So we start to look at any material stuff that's weighing us down. We look at potentially detoxing chemicals in the home. We look at detoxing relationships that are negative. And again, we come back to the detoxification of thought stuff that's kind of been running throughout. And in module 6, we look at the love stuff. So we look at relationships and we look at self-love and we look at self-acceptance and self-compassion and confidence. So it's a really exciting program. I can't wait to get into it. It's going to help you learn the tools that will help you banish fatigue, stress, and the inner critic for good. It tackles both the internal and the external components of health and well-being. So I know that it works, that these approaches work. It's really about how ready you are to make the change. It helps you get clear on your desires and what you want out of life, which is a big part of the wellbeing puzzle. And it also is going to, of course, help with confidence, calm, health, and energy. So the early bird offer for you guys live on the call is $150 off the full program price. So if you pay in full, that's 1,050 Australian dollars, or 3 payments of $375. And if you are ready to take advantage of this, you've got about 72 hours. And you'll see, if you scroll down a little bit on the page that you're watching, on the right-hand side, there is a link saying apply for my spot in the program. So you should click that and it will take you to a link on the website where you can apply for the program. And then what happens is I give you a call. We have a 30-minute discussion about where you're at, whether the program's right for you, any financial worries that you have. You know, my advice is don't wait. If this is something that sounds appealing, apply and we can work out the details later. The important thing is that you value yourself, that you step up and that you become, you know, take the first steps to investing in yourself. And that in itself is a self-compassionate act that, interestingly, is going to help you promote those really good feelings in the body we talked about. So the early bird offer ends on the 3rd of August. Don't forget to apply. And yeah, the link's there as well on this page. So while you're looking at that link, so this program hasn't been released. I haven't put any details on my website. The first intake is going to start on the 17th of August. So there's going to be more details to come in the following weeks. So stay updated via Facebook and on the website as well, beyondbeingwell.com. But as I said, there are really limited places. So there's probably only going to be up to 14 places, 12 to 14 places, which isn't very many. So if you do want to take advantage, then get on board now. I know you're going to love it. Okay. Question time. I'm going to turn this off. The link is also in the chat box, so you can see that there if you need. And I'm going to put myself back on camera. There you are. I'm just going to have some water as well. A bit thirsty. Okay. Awesome. Now I had an email question from Eva, so I'm going to start with her. I know the condition that Eva has been diagnosed with, and I know the exact position that she's in. So she's asked, how do I know how much to keep pushing myself when I feel ill and exhausted? And this is goes, you know, literally to the heart of what we were just talking about in terms of self-compassion. When we lose the ability to know when we should push ourselves and when we shouldn't, we've lost touch with that inner wisdom. And coaching is the tool to help get back in touch with those inner resources. It takes time, it takes accountability, it takes someone working with you, but it can happen. So in short, Eva, I would say if you feel like you're pushing yourself, then you know in your heart that you're probably going beyond what your physical limits are. Having said that, with chronic fatigue, the most important thing is to get rid of some of those background patterns of anxiety and stress. And particularly the most important thing is to get rid of the stress about symptoms. Ironically, with chronic fatigue and adrenal fatigue, the more we stress and are anxious about symptoms, the more we begin to create more symptoms through the activation of the fight or flight response. It's ironic, but it's 100% true. And I had that experience myself. And I know that some of the tools that I talked about in terms of lying flat, scheduling time for breathing, meditation, also doing things that you enjoy, they're the things that are going to help your body heal. stressing about pushing yourself, about the energy envelope, about how much time you have, those things are all creating subconscious patterns. My advice is to choose to prioritize the things that are going to help you evoke that relaxation response, and try and get rid of some of the things that are not serving you. So that might be, something quite drastic, like looking at your work environment, or it might be, relationships that aren't serving you. Anything that doesn't feel right, start to shift a little bit in terms of what you're prioritizing. There's no answer. Everyone is really different in terms of where you're at. But all I know is that focusing and worrying about how much energy you have is actually creating part of the problem. I hope that helps. I'm happy to talk more over email about that, because it's quite complicated, and I do have some great tools as well. Okay, so how do I stop myself from feeling guilty for taking the time for all those nicer things? Yeah, it's a similar thing. I feel so unproductive, and then that causes guilt. I mean, my question would be why you feel guilt, like what place that is coming from. Often guilt around not being busy, it comes from a feeling of unworthiness and a feeling of lack. So I would be wanting to go a little bit deeper in terms of where the guilt is coming from. I completely understand that position, because I think we all have moments where we feel like if we're looking after ourselves and caring for ourselves, then, we're not being productive, or we're not doing all the things on our to-do list. But I say this to mums a lot, what example would you like to be setting for your kids, or, or your clients, or whoever you work with, or your work colleagues? Like, would you like to be setting an example where you're active and thriving and happy? And if you need to do self-care to achieve those things, then, like, if other people choose to interpret that as selfish or whatever, that's their problem. Like, that's not your problem at all. The trick is to choose things which really are unique for you. So if doing things, like, sometimes we can feel guilty when we're doing things that we've been told to do. Like, a good example is a client of mine who, knows that she should meditate, but doesn't really enjoy it, and doesn't really get much out of it, and that's fine. So she feels guilty for not meditating. It's like, well, just because someone else said it's good for you doesn't mean it is. Like, choosing things that are aligned with your vision and your values and the life that you want to lead, you will feel less guilty about doing them, because they're so deeply nurturing that, the results, you'll be so much more productive, you'll be so much more happy, you'll be so much more healthy. Like, the results will speak for themselves. I think the only way to move beyond the guilt is to start doing some of this inner work in terms of why do you feel guilty, and what are those limiting beliefs that we can start to work on to remove the guilt. Because if we're living a life that is stressed and anxious and rushed and not really aligned with the life that we thought we deserved, like, at the end of the day, that's a disservice to every single person around us. That is a disservice to our friends, to our family, to our relationships. To our relationships, to our lives, to ourselves. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. Like, without knowing what's causing the guilt, it's hard, but I just think it's one of those things. It's like practice as well. When I first started doing self-care, I felt the same. Like, I was like, what do I deserve this for? And it was like, because this is what I need to survive. This is what I need to actually thrive. And that's different from other people, and that's okay. I'm going to leave it there. But again, happy to follow up via email. So meg@beyondbeingwell.com if you wanted to chat more about that. Is there any other questions before we go? Or if you wanted to just put any final reflections in the chat box, anything that stood out in terms of what you're going to take forward, would love to hear from you. So I hope to be running some more free trainings in the next couple of months. I have a huge number of things that I would love to talk about, including gut health, including how to meditate and mindfulness 101. I would love to talk about doing self-compassionate moving and exercise and how to find what really lights you up. And I would also love to talk about whole foods. So lots of things, but if there's anything in particular that you would like, then definitely join the conversation on Facebook. Would love to hear from you. So it's facebook.com/beyondbeingwell. And if there's nothing else, I'm just going to wait 1 or 2 more minutes in case there's anything else in the chat box. Once again, don't forget to apply for the program via the link or via my website. Very limited places, very exciting. It kicks off 17th of August. Yeah. And if there is nothing else, have one more last look. I'll stay on the chat box for a little bit longer in case there's any other questions. But in the meantime, I really wish you a beautiful evening and a lovely week full of self-care and self-compassion. Don't forget, we're trying to evoke the relaxation response at any opportunity. So I wish you wellness, purpose, and freedom. And I will speak to you very soon. Lots of love. Bye.